I love talking about nourishment wisdom, is what I call it.
Yeah.
And nourishment wisdom is food without fear.
Mm-hmm.
And it is nourishing. The act of nourishing is to promote the growth or to nurture something. And so, if we can be intentional in shifting our belief around, I'm eating to serve my body, I'm eating to nourish my body. And sometimes that is an emotional nourishment, right? Sometimes it is,
Yeah.
I just feel like I'm home, I want a homey comfort. And that's okay occasionally in my book, because wisdom is this intersection of rational and emotional mind, right?
Mm.
Rational mind, emotional senses. We have to use those together as human beings because that is how we're created.
What's up, you beautiful beasts? I'm Katie. I'm on a mission to help humans become their favorite versions of themselves and to strive for overall health by healing their relationship to food and exercise, healing their relationship to their body, and most importantly, healing their relationship to themselves, all without ever having to step on a scale. I have had the privilege to talk to all kinds of different humans who have been through a plethora of experiences just being a human and existing. I believe that every single time someone shares their story, at least one person listening will learn from it, be inspired by it, and maybe, just maybe, even change the entire direction of their life. These are the stories of humans unveiling their beautiful beast. Keep listening. This is the Unveiling the Beast podcast. So while I have you here on the Unveiling the Beast podcast, can you tell the listeners a little about can you tell the listeners a little bit about who you are and why you think you are
Yes.
who you
Yeah. Ooh, I love that second part. So, hi, everybody who doesn't know me. My name is Atara Parkinson, and I always open with I'm a mama of four littles. They're 8 and under, so that I won't say dictates, although it does, but it shapes my reality a lot right now. As well as I'm married to a wonderful partner who supports me and our household. And we have a little bit of a different reality than I would say the majority population is I am the primary breadwinner, and my husband, we call him Mr. Mom. So he gets to stay home and be present. I get to stay home too, technically. I work from home. So it's not like I'm going anywhere, but he's like the main
Yeah.
parent right now. So that is really fun and different for us. And then I'm a marriage and family therapist. So I've worked in mental health for 14 years. And the other part of my life that I am so passionate about and love is health coaching. And this is something that was shaped by my own journey. And why I love doing this so much is being in mental health for 14 years. And I felt like there's this piece missing, right? That sure, I can give interventions, I can help someone with overcoming low motivation, but there was something missing there. And when I went through my own health journey, it started to become obvious to me, and I became privy to the fact that the body and the mind are not disconnected, friends. There's no line here across our neck. What is happening in my mind is going to impact my body, and what is happening in my body, vice versa, is going to impact my mind. I'm so thankful now that that is becoming common knowledge, that that's becoming a more understood and popular belief. But that is what I do in my work, and that is what I'm so passionate about, is this integration between working with the mind but also supporting the body so that we can see the best results.
are. I love that so much because that's kind of the opposite of my story. Like, I'm a personal trainer and nutritionist. I can give you workout plans all day.
Yeah.
I can give you nutrition advice. I can't
Mm.
give meal plans because, ladies and
Mm.
gentlemen, it's illegal for anybody but a registered dietitian to do that. But
Okay.
I can give you advice.
Hmm.
But what's the missing piece? Oh, the mental part. So I
Yeah.
love that we're kind of like opposite ends of the circle and we're just like,
Yes. Yes.
yeah.
Yes. And what the
Mm-hmm.
term I heard that we use in community mental health is wraparound, right? How do we wrap around a
Mm.
client to say, what are the needs happening for you? And how can I come in on this part? Maybe someone else is going to come in, right? And work with mindset around diet, particularly. Maybe someone's going to come around like a dietitian and say, here, based on what you love to eat, here is what I'd recommend, or let me make a meal plan for it, whatever, right? I think that's so beautiful. I think we are blessed to be in a era where we are able to better connect with people like this, right? Like you and I, where maybe we come from different ends, but we can support the same client from those spectrums.
Yeah. So are you open and willing to share a little bit about your own story and
Oh,
how all of this came about?
yeah, absolutely. So it's funny you asked that. I was thinking even last night and talking to a client, I was like, in listening to, me talk about minerals, what piqued your interest? Why did you reach out to me? And she said, it was when you talked about binge drinking. And I was so surprised and shocked because it's not something that I went into in depth. I just kind of mentioned briefly in my history to cope and manage stress. I was binge drinking on the weekends. I said it so, like
Mhm.
it was like a 5-second comment, but that's what she latched onto. So I think there's such power in telling our stories. And so I'm always really open to do that. So
Yeah.
let's rewind to younger Atara. Yep, yep. I love the side effects. Mid 20s,
Thank
right? And this was 15 years ago for me. I am out of my undergrad degree. I'm in my graduate program. I am working full time with a pretty intense population then who had previously been incarcerated. I am doing a practicum for girls who were graduating out of the foster care system. So lots of trauma there too. That alone is
you.
60 hours work week between those two. And then on top of that, I'm doing my coursework for my graduate program. Talk about stress, talk about overdoing it, overwhelm. And
Yeah.
as I mentioned in previous conversations, I'm binge drinking on the weekends and I'm under eating because I have this whole idea in my head that I need to be a size 6, right? At a certain weight to be valuable. And also, I am training for a half marathon and doing intense hit workouts. Yeah. So you can imagine all of that together. My body was like, about a year later, like, no, Atara, we are done. We're not we're not doing this anymore. And what that looked like for me was extreme fatigue and exhaustion. Um, in the real world, if you were looking at me as my new husband was I would get out of bed for about 2 hours at a time and be so exhausted I would have to lay down again. And I mean,
Mm.
that's just not realistic, right? For our lifestyle, you cannot be taking 3, 4 naps a day. That's not going to work. So I was all excited, right? Because I had my first big girl job. I'm going to use my insurance to go get support. And I went to my allopathic doctor, and he's like, great, we're going to run some labs for you. I'm all excited. Come back in 2 weeks. He goes, well, your labs look fine, and kind of almost like shrugs at me. And I was like, well, that's not really an answer because I'm not fine. Here's what I'm dealing with. And he looks at me and goes, well, I don't maybe try increasing your greens. And I literally
Increase
remember
your what?
in your greens, like vegetables.
Greens.
Yes.
Okay.
And I literally almost laughed out loud because at this point I was so desperate to reverse what was happening. I was on a raw vegan diet. So getting greens was no
Mm.
was not the issue here. Yeah. So he then then he kind of goes, well, I'm not really sure what to tell you. So I started searching and found that's how I kind of found alternative medicine and got connected with another provider who ran my neurotransmitters. And what the results showed was that my fight or flight neurotransmitters were through the roof, like off the charts. You couldn't even see where they were because they were so high. And my calming neurotransmitters were non-existent, were like completely just used up, all gone. And
Mm.
we charted my sleep, and I was waking up 17 times a night. So because of the neurotransmission issues, I was constantly in a fight or flight, which then ended up leaving me feeling completely exhausted because it's very hard on the body. And that
Yeah.
is when I began my journey. I changed my eating. I got on an ancestral diet, eating whole foods, getting processed foods out, blah, blah, blah. Helped a lot. Then fast forward a few years later, I had babies. And I had my first three back to back to back. So each are 18 months apart. But even after my first kiddo, I experienced postpartum, what we now know is postpartum anxiety and postpartum rage. Now, this was
Mm,
8 years ago. These were not well-known terms yet. We just kind of had postpartum depression as the diagnosis for a postpartum
yeah.
experience. And so, the doctor would say, well, do you want to hurt yourself or your baby? No. Like, are you enjoying things that you used to? No. But, that's kind of laughable. Of course I'm not. But I was having really intense paralysis around decision making. I was feeling very irritable, very reactive to any little thing that would go awry. I like using sleep as the example because that was one of my really big triggers when the baby wouldn't go to sleep, quote unquote, on time, when he
Right.
woke up, right, from his sleep too early, right? These were things that would just send me over the edge, right? And again, this for me really manifested as rage, anger, like, and now I know that was from a feeling of lack of control, and the anxiety that brought up in this situation. So then I'm dealing with this, right? And I have these little kids. I don't know how to help myself. I don't know even what's really going on. I had never had anxiety in my history. I had never been an angry person. So this was really shocking, unnerving experience for me. And that's when I discovered minerals and mineral balancing and the importance of minerals, especially for new mamas, but for all of us, and especially if you're dealing with mental health symptoms. Minerals are important for the entire body, not just any one system. They impact every system in the body, and they're what would refer to as like foundational for health. Meaning, if
Mm,
you're wanting to do any extreme diet, you're wanting to train for a half marathon, you're wanting to fix your thyroid, you're wanting to work on your gut health, whatever it is, check your minerals first and get your minerals balanced because it's going to make all of those other goals more achievable. Or you're wanting to work on your mental health. That's another great example. Get your minerals
yeah.
on board. And then all of those other things are going to feel more attainable for you.
Mm. I'm loving this because I've never, this is my first time hearing about it as like a focus. Like, I mean,
Okay.
all the things matter with health,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
I've never heard of this as a focus. And, we're taught about minerals and when you get a nutrition education, but you don't,
Mhm.
at least me, it's just like, oh, I know about these things. Let's move on to the carbohydrates. Let's move on to.
Yes.
So this is really interesting to me.
Ah, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, tell me like more. What did you learn when you learned about minerals? And clearly, I'm getting the sense that they were not a focus.
No, it was just kind of like a piece in a chapter. Like
Hmm.
you kind of learn about each one. To be honest, I did not memorize them, maybe enough
Yeah.
for the test, but
Uh-huh.
and yeah, it's you learn about each one and what foods you can get them from.
Yep.
Um,
Okay.
but other than that, it's the main focus has been like the macronutrients
Yep.
and micronutrients and just I mean, like, yeah. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to redo my
No,
certification.
no, you're good. No, okay, you're good.
Yeah.
See, and this is why exactly to go back to the start of our conversation, why we work together, right? And why cross
Hmm.
referral is so
Yeah.
important because yeah, giving someone, maybe the macro version is not my skill set. It's not my specialty. I'm going to tell you to increase protein, of course, because that's a well-known kind of general fact. But getting into the nitty-gritty of that is not necessarily my skill set. But my skill set is minerals and mental health. So that's why we have each other and why connection is so beautiful. Well, so let's go
Mm,
through then. I'm sure you're familiar with the crucial four, and those are magnesium,
mm,
sodium, calcium, potassium. Yeah.
mhm.
And we all kind of know, right? We kind of know what those are a little bit, calcium and dairy. We know kind of general statements like that. But I love to give a really practical example of what happens with minerals in our day-to-day life and why they're so important. Okay? So let's say we wake up one morning and we realize the alarm clock hasn't gone off. Oh my gosh. Right?
Mhm.
Immediate stress panic. I'm going to be late. Let's get the show on the road. Jump out of bed. You're grabbing everything you need. You're going through your mental checklist. You're making sure I have a meeting later today. I need to look presentable. You're also having to think about what do I need later on for the day? I need to grab my lunch. Maybe I need this for the meeting. If you have kids like me, you're probably yelling at them. Get your shoes on, right? Make sure your teeth are brushed. This is a stressed state. And it's something that we all experience. There's no way to avoid stress completely in life. We have to be able to manage this. And this is where minerals
Mhm.
come in. Magnesium, for example, is going to support your neurotransmitters communicating in that process, your nerve transmission, your neuromuscular conduction, the ability to move my hands or my body through space and time requires magnesium. I use up magnesium in that process, burn through it, if you will. You're going to need your potassium on board to think clearly, to use your memory. Where did I put my keys? Right? You need magnesium to be able to
Yeah.
have that synthesis and not get consumed in the chaos that is swirling around you. We also know that potassium helps quiet down the neurons to support good sleep and circadian rhythm. We need that calcium balanced, not too high, not too low, so that we're
Yes.
not extra irritable and we're not stressed. And we call it in mental health as rumination. And that is perseverating on an experience much later on after it's happened. So maybe down the day, let's say lunchtime, I'm sitting around lunch or I'm trying to focus on writing up a report and I keep thinking about, oh my gosh, why didn't my alarm go off? Oh, we were so late. Why didn't this always happens to me? Blah. That's rumination. And that's again an indicator that our minerals are in balance. We might need more or less of something. Um, Sodium helps keep our nervous system regulated. So I'm not sitting in the corner crying that I'm late, right? And I'm even more late to something. Symptoms like emotional hypersensitivity, being easily offended or triggered, again, perseverating on what someone thinks of me or something that's happened to me are all indicators that minerals are imbalanced in the body. And so I love to give this example because I think it's something everyone can relate to. And these might seem kind of basic, but it's also very foundational and important. Because if you were like me, I was unable to keep calm. I was angry and reactive in my life, bothered by the smallest inconveniences, snappy with my partner. I mentioned paralyzed by decision making and constantly guilt ridden, right, for how I was treating those around me. When we say it like that, I think many people can hear that and go, "Oh, whoa, that is important.
Yeah.
Those are not things I want to experience or continue experiencing in my life."
Mm. Ooh, this is good
Yeah.
stuff. I'm like
Yeah,
all
let me
interested
pause.
now. I'm
Let it
like,
absorb.
yeah. Well, I love too that you used the alarm clock example because this happened to me, I want to say last week,
Oh,
where I was like, I told my husband I normally set it for 5 and my eyes
mhm.
popped open, it was 5:30. And we fling out of bed and I'm like,
Yes.
my alarm didn't go off. Well, it's because I forgot to set it the night before.
Darn it. Yes,
So,
darn
but
it.
we tend to blame the device that the alarm is on. But
Mhm.
I'm glad you used that example because I completely that was the scenario for me, getting my son ready, making sure he had
Right.
breakfast and I packed his lunch and his water and oy,
Exactly.
yeah. So
Exactly. Yep. Absolutely.
so for the newbie like
Hmm.
myself, what
Hmm.
how would you recommend to start, or even is there like a testing you could test your levels
Yep.
or yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, love that question. So there's absolutely a test called an HTMA, which stands for hair tissue mineral analysis. And I work with two wonderful functional nutritionists. You can find them at the Holistic Collaboration, and they will run an HTMA for you. I believe you can just get the HTMA if you want, just to see it, or you can buy one of their packages where it's, like a 6 week or 6 session, like this is the information and now what do I do about it? And I help support them in the mental health arena there. But that's also something I don't do the testing myself, but
Mhm.
I work really intuitively with knowing the foundations and knowing which symptoms are coming up for you. That's where we're going to start. So, for example, if I have a client that is a new mama and she's having a lot of the anxiety, she's having a lot of the overwhelm, I'm going to start her on something like increasing the magnesium, because the magnesium is going to have a really quick calming effect on that nervous system. And there's a couple ways. I'll just throw out some suggestions. You can get magnesium orally. You can get magnesium through mineral and spring water is a great
Mm.
source for magnesium. You can get magnesium transdermally, meaning through the skin, through lotions. Earthly has a great one that we use on our kids every single night. Another one I recommend for mamas too is bath flakes, because we're always giving our kids baths,
Mm.
right? And so to throw the bath flakes in the bath with the kiddos, they're getting some magnesium, and then I will throw my feet over the edge and soak my ankles. And then I'm
Mm.
getting magnesium and everyone's covered and getting a great night's sleep. Right? That's wonderful, right? A win-win. So that's an example for magnesium. Now, if someone is more in the wheelhouse of kind of depressive symptoms or low energy, struggling with motivation, we're going to start with different items. Maybe something like, and this is going to sound really weird. I promise you don't have to go out and um, learn how to cook beef liver, but beef liver or oysters in a capsule form, and
Mm.
these then can be easily consumed. You don't have to stress about learning to cook or consume something like that. And these are really chocked full. Beef liver is actually called nature's multivitamin,
Mm.
right? There is a wheelhouse of powerful nutrients in beef liver that is supporting our ATP production, right? So
Mhm.
zinc, copper in there, says to name some fused B vitamins, for example, right, that support our energy production. So depending on what a client is presenting with, will show me how to start with them. And then what I do is we layer so that people aren't feeling overwhelmed by the process. So we're starting with magnesium. I want you to take that for a week, report back. How are you feeling with that? Okay, great. Now let's add the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So maybe after that, we're talking about potassium and potassium rich foods, how to get potassium in the diet. Katie, do you know your favorite sources of potassium?
Bananas, potatoes.
Bananas. Oh, yes,
Bananas and
girl.
potatoes, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I don't know if you enjoy bacon, but
Oh, yeah.
bacon, yes, bacon has more potassium actually than a banana. What?
Hold on. Uh, cover your ears.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Absolutely.
Uh,
Yeah. And because no one's out there, right?
yeah.
Like uh touting bacon. And these are just things that we don't even know we don't know. But for example, I could tell by your reaction you enjoy bacon.
Yeah, we have it every
Yeah.
weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amen. We have a couple times a week in our house. And why that is intuitively our bodies know what it needs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And over time, however, we start because of diet culture, because of we get told, oh, bacon's bad, right? Bacon, too much fat, too much cholesterol, blah, 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 blah. right? And so we get this stigma in our minds about certain foods, and I can't have that too much. And we disconnect from this intuition is actually telling us, I love that. There's something in that that my body needs, that my body is craving and crying out for, right? Now, let's
Mm,
preface that a little bit with saying whole foods, right? Of course,
right.
your body does not need the packaged sugary good or Snickers bar. Let's say that your body does not need the Snickers bar, right? But within reason, if your body is craving blueberries, there's likely something in blueberries that is really nourishing for your body at that point in time. I use my husband. He has an ADHD. He's got an ADHD
Mhm.
brain, neurodivergent. Homeboy loves steak. He would eat steak probably every day if I let him. There is a reason our budget just can't, right? Our budget can't afford steak every day.
Right.
Yeah. But there's something in that, right? There's iron, there's lots of zinc in that meat. Again, those B vitamins that his body is really drawn towards and his brain is asking for. And so that's how I really love working with people and encouraging people tune in to what your body, how's your body responding. It's interesting in my cycle, I will have a different week right before, right, my period, that desire for potatoes, sweet potatoes in particular, will
Mm,
increase dramatically. And I know that I can recognize that now because I know my body is needing something different in that period of time. And so sweet potatoes are my favorite. I will batch cook 4 or 5, put them in the fridge for the week, and then on a busy morning, whip one out, slap some great grass-fed butter on there, high quality salt and pepper, boom, have it with my bacon, happy as a clam.
no, I love this. And one of the things, my eyes watering.
Oh no.
Anyway, I just I'm so happy you're here. Um,
You told me I could eat bacon. Yes.
no, I think one of the important things that you're saying without saying is listening to our bodies.
Mhm.
Um, and there's a piece to that I want to speak to, if I can put it in
Mhm.
words, is like we are told if you're craving this, don't eat that. So what we end
Mhm.
up doing is we eat this,
Mm.
and then that didn't help. So we eat this, and then that didn't help,
Yeah.
and then we eat this, and then that didn't help, and then we eat this, and then that didn't help.
Ah,
And then we end up eating the thing we were craving anyway,
yes.
and we
Oh,
overate rather than just
yes.
eating. I always use a cookie. I like using cookies for the example,
Mhm.
but if you just ate
Mhm.
the freaking cookie in the first
Yeah.
place and listened,
Mm.
just because it's a craving that society or diet culture has labeled as bad,
Mhm.
doesn't mean you can't eat the freaking thing. So
Exactly.
yeah, like listening to our bodies
Yep.
and that goes back also to the mind body connection
Mhm. Yes,
piece.
girl. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And I
Mhm.
love you brought up cookies because that's my favorite dessert, right? I love cookies. And what I've learned is there's two components in there that my body is really reaching for, right? And sometimes you're right. I'm just going to eat the dang cookie because I do love a cookie and it makes me
Mhm.
happy in life. I'm also going to do that within balance. So every time I want the cookie, am I gonna go eat the cookie? No. Sometimes I'm gonna go, oh, you know what? I remember there's butter, a lot of butter in cookies, and there's also sugar. So the butter route, my body is really desiring quality fats, and that's not something I often get enough of. And so I'll just go eat a piece of butter sometimes, right? And be perfectly content in that. And then maybe sometimes I'll eat the cookie after, right? Like I'm like, okay, I did really want the cookie. That didn't really hit it, right?
Yeah.
I also learned this was so powerful for me that sugar cravings, I had a wicked, I actually call it a sugar demon because it was felt so controlling, especially postpartum. And I learned that a sugar demon is actually a mineral magnesium deficiency. And so
Mm.
when I am craving sugar, I'm lacking magnesium. And then get this, I go eat the sugar, which depletes my magnesium further. And then I'm on this hamster wheel of,
Interesting.
yeah, of driving my deficiency further. And so within literally a week or two of introducing microdosing magnesium throughout my day, my sugar craving completely diminished, is what I'd say. Now, like we said, do I still eat treats? Do I still love baking? Do I still bake cookies for myself and my kids? Yeah, absolutely. But if I may be going on a sugar detox, or maybe I am, I don't know, that's really all I do, really, is occasionally do a processed sugar detox. I will, I know that I can say no, right? That
Hmm.
if I am like, no, that's not going to serve me today, then I have the ability where before it felt like I didn't even have that. So
Mm.
yeah, knowing that our body, and oh, the other thing I was going to say about sugar is when I see a lot of sugar and carb craving in clients, we know that typically there's something going on with energy production because those are quick hits for an energy boost. And that's what the body is
Yeah.
needing and requiring. Yep. And so let's hit that in let's support the body, and then let's watch how our draw for those foods changes. And inevitably across the board, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How would you speak to the person who gets the sugar and carb
Mm.
cravings because they're restricting them so
Oh,
harshly? Because
yeah.
that's a lot of the people that I work with is like they think they are like super addicted to sugar and it's because they're restricting themselves and their
So
diets are
much.
so rigid. And
Mm.
psychologically, when you say you can't have this, your brain's going
Right.
to be like,
Yeah.
watch me.
Well, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's that like obsession and over focus then. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That was me completely. With
Hmm.
I had a couple, my first two babies were in the NICU. And so with the third, I was trying really hard and I was obsessing over my diet because I was desperate to fix my body so that I wouldn't have this experience again. And so I went on an extreme elimination diet. If anyone out there is familiar with the GAPS diet, that's what I did. I did what's called full GAPS, but it cuts out all processed sugar, almost all carbohydrates. It's very, very, yeah, yes, it's very intense. And it's not something I would ever recommend doing without the foundation of good mineral status in your body. On the GAPS group, I see people saying, I'm getting worse. I
Mm.
am, yep. And I'm like, it's because your minerals aren't there to protect you from the stress that you're putting on your body. And so I would say, absolutely, if you are noticing within yourself that there's this obsession, I often use the phrase perfectionistic
Hmm.
mindset, then we need to back off that. We need to fix that and deal with that first before we move forward. I have a really great post and it has kind of this scale. And on
Hmm.
one side, it says paranoia. And on the other side is shutdown. And my question that I propose on this post is where are you resonating from? What are we operating out of? Because if you're operating in that paranoia space of obsession, I can't do this, or I have to, mold is another big one in the holistic world. Oh my gosh, I
Mm.
have mold in my house. I have to get rid of it. I have to do all the things. I have to detox from the mold. Blah, 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 blah. Well, like that obsessional mindset is going to be interconnected to part of the problem here. And what I love, again, to go back to minerals, is the mineral balancing is going to actually hit both of those. It's going to hit and help support a healthy middle ground mindset. And it's also going to protect the body and help natural detoxing. And so that's
Hmm.
again to go back to the statement of minerals are foundational. That's what I mean, is that we're going to support both of that. So that's what I'd say. I don't know if I really answered your question. I would love to hear from your perspective. How do you coach and support clients that are struggling with that?
Well, I don't coach them on minerals.
Okay, yes, yes,
Um,
yes. Good
but
mindset. Yeah.
have you ever heard of the book Intuitive Eating?
I haven't. I should add that to my list.
Oh my gosh, that book changed
Mm.
not my life, but the way I live my life because I was on that obsession side
Hmm.
of I call it like it's both obsession and living in fear of if
Yes.
I eat this, then I will gain
Ugh.
weight, kind
Yep.
of, or not lose weight or whatever.
Yes.
And so one of the principles of intuitive eating that people get mixed up all the time is giving yourself unconditional permission to eat,
Mm.
which people take that as, oh, eat all the crap all the time. No, this is if you have a box. I don't know why I said box because I've never bought a box of cookies, but if you, oh, we'll go with box. If you have a box of cookies in front of you, um, and you say, nope, I can't have that.
Mm.
What are you going to do? Most likely, if you're in that obsessive mindset, you're probably going to go eat the whole box in two
Right.
hours, right? If
Right.
you allow yourself unconditionally, you give yourself
Hmm.
that permission to eat the thing that you want, and you have to taste it,
Yes.
feel how it feels in your mouth,
Yes.
then you won't want more.
Yeah.
And
I
sometimes
know.
this is my favorite example because this has happened a lot since I started this adventure myself is
Mhm.
sometimes I realize I don't even like the cookie and
Yeah.
I won't finish it.
You're so right.
So,
Katie, I love
yeah.
that. I have an example to piggyback you, which
Okay.
is my husband brought home a box of like the pre-made pack brownies.
Mm,
And I was like, really, honey? Like, I make bomb brownies from scratch. He's like, Tara, sometimes you just want like when you want McDonald's, like there's nothing like just the McDonald's burger. I said, okay, fine. So he made them and we ate them and he went, these were disappointing. Like this, you're right. Yes. So
yeah.
sometimes we eat the thing and then we realize when we've actually been eating quality food, they're like, ugh, that actually isn't even good. Right. It's funny
Yeah.
how we can start to shift and change that way. But to go back to your point, which is I love talking about nourishment wisdom, is what I call it.
Yeah.
And nourishment wisdom is food without fear.
Mm-hmm.
And it is nourishing. The act of nourishing is to promote the growth or to nurture something. And so, if we can be intentional in shifting our belief around, I'm eating to serve my body, I'm eating to nourish my body. And sometimes that is an emotional nourishment, right? Sometimes it is,
Yeah.
I just feel like I'm home, I want a homey comfort. And that's okay occasionally in my book because wisdom is this intersection of rational and emotional mind, right? Rational
Mm,
mind, emotional senses. We have to use those together as human beings because that is how we're created, right?
yeah.
It's so important.
Yeah.
Mm.
I love to I highly recommend you read that book, Intuitive Eating
Yes.
by registered dietitians Elise Reich and Evelyn Tribole.
Mm. Okay.
And what is fascinating is that the book was written in 1995
Wow.
and it's just now getting
Getting waves. Yeah.
both both popular and both trashed by people who are still stuck in the diet culture
Mm.
mindset.
Hmm.
Um, but for the obsessive person like I was, that
Mm.
book saved my mental
Mm.
health around food, exercise, all of it.
Mhm.
Um, but back to what you were saying, like one of the things that it helps with is, there's always a lot of not I shouldn't say always, there's a lot of guilt that we
Mhm.
have that's centered around food.
Yep.
And it's like you didn't rob an orphanage. I don't know why I use that example, but like so Intuitive eating kind of takes the morality out of food. And yes, there are
Mm.
foods that are more nutrient dense and foods that are less nutrient dense, but it can help you. The idea is to look at apple pie and an
Mhm.
apple and have an emotionally neutral reaction to both of them
Mm.
when you eat them.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, it's just like it's a mindset shift.
Yeah.
And it gets a lot, it honestly, it gets a lot of crap from people who haven't read the book and misunderstand the principles.
Mm.
There's 10
Mhm.
principles. There's a whole ass chapter on each one.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's a
Oh,
really good book. I highly
okay.
recommend it
Adding that to
to
my
the
list
world.
as soon,
Okay.
as soon as we hang up. I love it.
Nice.
And I love that you mentioned belief systems because belief systems are so crucial.
Hmm.
And we talk a lot, of course, about belief systems in the mental health world. And belief systems are essentially come back to four really concepts. And our beliefs are typically about intelligence, our success, our abilities, and our self-worth.
Hmm.
Yeah. And we can look at, for example, relationship to food and look at how a belief might come up in connection to one of those
Hmm.
four things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And belief, I love the image of a iceberg, meaning that on the top of the surface, what we might just see as we go about our day is this little portion of the belief, but
Hmm.
really underneath the surface or in our unconscious mind, what we're walking around with is this huge, colossal thing under the surface there that is greatly then impacting the way that we are relating with the world around us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I just learned very recently is that
Mhm.
I don't know how we could relate this to the iceberg analogy, but the iceberg underneath the water is a completely
Mhm.
different color than the
Oh,
iceberg on top. It's like a
oh,
dark blue, a white, and I don't know
yeah,
how we could put that in there, but it's a
yeah.
different it's almost like it's a different entity in itself.
Yeah. Yes, you're so
Yeah.
right. Yeah, so the way that I connect that is like a filter or a lens, right?
Hmm.
That I have. And an example would be I grew up in a household with a mom, love you mom, don't mean to throw you under the bus, but with with a diet, a yo-yo dieting culture. She was
Yeah.
constantly Atkins. Okay, now I'm going to do this diet. Now I'm
Hmm.
going to do, low carb or no fat or blah, 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 on and on. Or the shakes. I can't remember the name, but she did like the shakes and the bars, right? For a
Oh, is
season.
it Slim Fast?
It's been fast for sure. And then there's a newer one, like in the last 10 years that came
Oh,
out.
okay.
Yeah. That is like, it's just the new version of Slim
Shakeology.
Yes, that's it. Yes,
I'm like,
Shakeology.
hold on. Yeah,
Yes,
that
Katie knows it. It's in there.
one.
Yes,
Oh.
yes. So, right, I'm going to then have a different lens because I watched my mother do this throughout the years. And versus someone who, an example I'll use is actually someone from another country. And she was not raised with any diet culture, any obsession around body image, putting down a certain type body type, on and on.
Hmm.
And so that created then a really different lens for that individual versus me. And I love that you're saying, and then that color will look different for me until it pops to the surface and I'm able to bring my awareness around it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I love that idea. I love that layer.
Yeah. And I feel you with the like my mom was the same way. She was like yo-yo dieter,
Mhm.
or always tried to shrink herself as tiny as possible. And I was a big kid.
Mhm.
Um, I just was. And there was a point in one of like the midst of one of her disordered eating phases of her life,
Mhm.
where she was smaller than me when I was 10.
Mhm.
And to hear that, how do I say this? Like she's always been super supportive. She's always had my back, right?
Mhm.
So ba based on things she said,
Mm.
I was okay. But based on watching her and what she was doing to her body, my body was not okay.
Yeah.
And so I
Yep.
think I got that out correctly.
Yeah, you did. You did. I totally
But
understand.
yeah.
Yes.
So,
So you're going back to this point that I made about stress, right?
mm,
And that at times a belief, a way that we're identifying ourselves or in relationship to others is even an unconscious stress on the body and the mind. And we know science shows that when we're in a stress state, our cortisol level goes up. And then
mhm,
the impact of that is what? Holding on, right, to
yeah,
resources, AKA our fats, right, as a protection mechanism. Because our nervous system, it almost is like it doesn't exist in the world today. It is informed by hundreds of thousands of years ago and says, someone said it this way, the nervous system doesn't know the difference between taxes and tigers. And I really love that.
mm, yeah,
Meaning the stress of the a tax having to do your taxes is the same to your nervous system as being chased by a tiger. It does the nervous system does not think that those are different. It experiences it the exact same way in our bodies. And that is going to cause the body to hold on to those resources and act in a stress state. And then that has a cascade of waterfall impact on us.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I love that analogy. I always use it not to the stress point, but I always say the body doesn't know the difference between a diet and a famine
Oh, that's a good one
because
too.
because in both scenarios, you're not giving
Mm.
it enough nourishment.
Yes.
So I know it was
Yep.
totally off topic, but
No, no, I think it was spot on.
yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
Well, I feel like I could talk to you all day. Um, uh, I have one more question for you, and I
Hmm.
ask at the end of every episode, and that is if you had one piece of advice that you could give to the world, what would it be?
Yes, it would be that if you are in a state that you are not content with, that is not serving you, know that there are always options and possibilities out there. And I know sometimes when we talk about holistic health, wellness, it could start to feel overwhelming. And people go, oh my gosh, where do I even start? Um, Start with one basic, right? Whether that's movement, increasing walk, just walking, right? Walking in your day. Maybe it is getting those magnesium flakes and throwing them in the bath, or finding a magnesium that you really respond to. Maybe it is switching one thing in how you consume and relate to food, right? Maybe it's for potassium. You're like, yeah, I do like sweet potatoes. I'm going to increase those in my diet. Or I love coconut water. I'm going to start drinking that more regularly. Just take one step at a time and don't feel like you have to do all of the things right away. And also there's a person out there for you. Whether it's me, whether it's you, Katie, whether it's another coach or practitioner or therapist, there's support out there for you. Do not hesitate. You know, it's interesting in shame. The result of shame is isolation. Shame causes us to pull within ourselves and away from others. And wouldn't you know it, the antidote then is the opposite, which is connection. So I say,
Mm,
don't hesitate to reach out, to connect. If I can't support you or find what you need, I'm certainly going to help you find the person who can. And so that's what I want to say.
I love it. Beautiful beasts. Atara Parkinson signing off. Until next time. Balaka.